Just as an example, how many of you remember the day this happened? August 2007, I-35W in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As I look back through my 38-year career, I can remember certain days where I can remember exactly where I was when an event happened, watching it on the news and saying, holy cow, life is going to be different because of this. So this was one of those holy cow days for me. We were at the subcommittee on construction, Brian, and you remember that group. It's 50 or so state engineers, construction engineers. And there's poor Tom Raven sitting back there watching the national news of an interstate bridge that fell down in his home state, his hometown in Minnesota. And everybody's thinking, boy, life is going to be different for you, Mr. Tom. And they were right. Even from a national perspective, we don't have bridges that fall down from a structural defect or other defect. We've had bridges that have failed from fires, hits by trucks, gasoline tankers, then the span burns, melts, and collapses. We've had a number of structure collapses like that. But it's unusual to have a structure that collapses with reasons unknown that are related to the design or construction of that bridge. So this is one of those holy cow moments on a national basis, not only in Minnesota, but for us nationally. The good news is that Minnesota had done some design build, and it was obvious to their design build team that what had to be done. They knew that design build was the way to go, and they used their existing design build process, and from the day of the collapse to the day of award, October the 8th, that was 69 days. So they shortlisted 5 teams, received qualification, shortlisted 5, 1 dropped out, went through the ATC process and confidential meeting with all 4 teams over a 2-week period, indicating to them, yes, this ATC is equal or better than the base concept that we had. They provided the proposing teams with the existing structure design, but they were allowed to provide options to that, and they also had limitations on what could not be provided by the MnDOT Bridge Office. But the proposing teams could come in with different structural designs for this structure. And you saw the innovation starting to come out with MnDOT's process that provided for a quality-based award in addition to cost. So this is one example where there was an obvious schedule need, obvious cooperation from the local agencies, and it was a true case of an excellent use of design build. Their evaluation criteria were based on their project goals. Of course, quality was high on the concern of MnDOT. This was a Mississippi River bridge crossing, a major structure, and things had to be done right. I think they specified a 100-year design life, and they wanted to see quality in design and construction. So quality was 50% of their evaluation criteria. But considering their partners, City of Minneapolis, Corps of Engineers, and the local agencies in Minneapolis, aesthetics was also very high on their list and also rated 20% of their award criteria. And they wanted to have this criteria there to differentiate between the 4 firms that were proposing, to see which firm was the excellent firm rather than just the good firm or the better than average firm. So they set up their evaluation criteria to meet their project goals, and it even included a public outreach goal. In Minnesota, this bridge collapse became a huge political issue, as you could appreciate. So it was important for MnDOT to show the public that what they were doing was going to restore integrity of their structural program and also restore faith that MnDOT was properly managing their design and construction program. So that became an award criteria in the design build contract, and they have proposers telling MnDOT how they were going to have public outreach and coordination and communication session with the locals to build confidence with the public. So I'm just trying to show you how MnDOT took this example of project goals, built it into their procurement process, and that led to the selection of the successful design build team. MnDOT, just like Tennessee, has a statute for design build. Their statute requires what I call adjusted bid. They can use A plus B like TDOT does, and they use that in the award of the contract. So they had a formula for award, and the contracting industry knew, based on the award criteria, how much emphasis MnDOT wanted out of one of those criteria. They also knew the value of a point, whether it be a point for quality, a point for aesthetics, a point for public communications. They knew the monetary value of that point in the award formula. So they based their technical and price proposals based on the goals and the criteria that MnDOT selected. There's a quote here from MnDOT statutes dealing with exactly how they're going to award design build contracts. And Minnesota's industry was also very instrumental in developing the design build statute in Minnesota and had a very key role in developing that law. So they worked with MnDOT, and successfully they were moving forward. The other key aspect of this was the state law specifies who's on the technical review committee. MnDOT employees, it also says that there will be a member from the Minnesota chapter of the Associated General Contractors on the selection panel, if you can believe that. Of course, this person's firm may not participate in the proposal process because of conflict of interest, but the Minnesota Contractors Association, AGC in Minnesota, felt it was important, lobbied their state legislature, and wrote the law such that there had to be an AGC member on the selection panel for their design build projects. How that played out on I-35, I'm not sure if you can see this. This is a slide exact from MnDOT's webpage, but at the top, this box up here, there's 6 individuals. That's where the bottom row is the technical panels that reviewed all the technical proposals for aesthetics, roadways, communication, structures. Those are the technical teams from Minnesota DOT, and actually there's a representative of Minneapolis on that, one of those aesthetics teams. So these teams rate and score the technical proposals, and then the final rankings roll up to that technical evaluation selection committee. But that is 4 MnDOT people. Wayne Murphy was an AGC representative, and there also was a city of Minneapolis representative on that final technical selection committee. So you could see it's a process that relied on the goals and local input as far as the aesthetics and getting buy-in with the city of Minneapolis. So MnDOT tried to hit a lot of objectives with their selection process, and I think they were successful in doing that. So also, if you probably remember watching the news at this time, at least reading Engineering News Record and a few other publications, you saw that the selection was controversial. Shortlisted 5, 1 dropped out, 4 firms left, 3 local firms, 1 out of state. Flatiron Manson was the out of state firm. They were based out of Colorado. I'm not sure what the city is in Colorado. Became a concern to the local contractors. But MnDOT went through their process. They rated and ranked the proposals. Cost plus time bidding was an award criteria. And you could see that the successful firm here, Flatiron Manson, had the highest price. They also had the highest score at 91 in comparison to the local firms, the 60s and 50s. So with the adjusted bid process, they became the best value firm. And after the contract was awarded, MnDOT went through their procedure, awarded the contract, and then came the bid challenge. One of the local contractors challenged the whole process of awarding the contract this way. Project continued to move forward, was built. The challenge went through the courts, and the courts upheld MnDOT's process that they followed their procedures. They were not arbitrary or capricious in the selection process, and were able to demonstrate to the courts And the people that made this decision, that they followed their process and determined that this firm was the best value selection. Somewhat controversial for the time, but at least MnDOT was in the position of having a process in place, following that process, and then having it upheld by the courts. Bottom line is it became a successful project. The successful contractor proposed things that were different, did it in a different way. There were a lot of quality hooks into the structural design development. They had remote electrical monitoring systems in the structure itself that could monitor cracks and any type of evidence of fatigue cracks in the structure. They had weekly meetings with the public, walking tours of the project. That was set up as part of their proposal process, their communications with the public. They met weekly with the public and gave tours of the project, even through the winter months in Minneapolis. So it was just a different way of approaching a bridge replacement project, and for MnDOT became a very successful project. Do we have any I-35W experts out in the audience that I don't know of? No? Okay. Anyway, it's just a different way of approaching things, but design build does allow you to do this type of things. Brian.
Useless TDOT design build trivia. When we were starting our program, our very first project was about to start when this was happening. That's why our program is now, we're not evaluating, we might be changing it. At the time, we're still low bid, A plus B, in the interest of getting it started 10 years ago with that first project, because this was still being over.
Yep.
Our intent to implement our road buildings, we had deep concerns about the beauty contest, as we've heard, and if they're low bid and $50 million is not a good waste of money, a good use of taxpayer dollars. So we're getting it off the ground. This was in the back of my mind is why we went low bid, A plus B. Useless design build is close to trivial.
No, it's not that useless, it's important. Starting slow is okay. PennDOT, Ohio DOT, a number of agencies started with low bid design build. Eventually they moved on to quality-based selection. I think it's just a way of evolving. We all evolve in everything we do. We learn our lessons. MnDOT survived the court challenges. PennDOT did not survive their initial court challenge. They lost, and it set back their program. But then they came back and changed the state law, allowed it, and now they're doing quality-based. They're doing public-private partnerships. They're doing some unique things in Pennsylvania. So it's a matter of evolution, and it's not useless trivia, Brian. It's a good point.